from the Department of Communication in Philipsburg. This is a special edition of Inside Government with Cedric Peterson.
To our audience here at home and around the world, you are now Inside Government. If you've been following our 10-part series, this is episode 6, where we're talking to the professionals at VNG-i International as we talk about fostering resilient crisis management. Of course, if you've been following the series so far, you're learning that there's 4 pillars to this. And in this edition, I've invited our VNG-i International crisis management expert, Ms. Marthe Huibers. Ms. Huibers, it's great to have you in the program. Thank you so much for joining us as we are going to be talking about train the trainer and, of course, the knowledge center part of the 4 pillars of fostering resilient crisis management. It's great to have you in the program. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Marthe, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, education and professional background. Give us some insight.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm originally a psychologist and crisis management expert, working for over 15 years in crisis management now, mainly in the Netherlands, where I'm from, but also across Europe and in some cases also across the world. I have a focus on learning and development in that, so I'm basically professionalized in how to create training plans, how to do learning and development, and of course the human factor from my psychologist background, because I'm a strong believer in plans and procedures, but in the end, it's the human factor that makes a crisis work or work not out. So that's what I do.
And your current position at VNG International, what would that be?
I'm the expert for the training of trainers and the knowledge center. So, which means that I'm working on, creating a trainers group on the island and with them also developing a knowledge center.
Okay. And St. Martin, of course, keep in mind that these 4 pillars, once again, information management, regional collaboration, the scaling operations and procedures, and now we're getting into the train the trainer knowledge center with Ms. Huibers. And let's get right into it. Can you provide an overview of the concept of the knowledge center for crisis management?
Yeah, sure. So what we aim at with the Knowledge Center is that we want to create a space where knowledge and lessons learned and plans and procedures are all centralized and at one spot so that they are accessible as well as for the people who are actually have to work when crises are happening and for people who are busy with preparing on crisis management. So there should be some sort of centralized space where all that knowledge is accessible. Because there is a lot of knowledge and there are a lot of plans and procedures and there is a lot of experience with crisis management on the island. But what we're now trying to do is make that knowledge accessible, easy findable, etc. And for me, one of the most important things of the Knowledge Center and TOT program is that we do that with a group of trainers of Sint Maarten of the island who are responsible for also developing that knowledge, developing trainings, and make sure that those trainings can be also delivered to, the government, but also other parties that are that have a role one way or another in crisis management.
Okay. What are the key objectives that, as an organization, and we want this to also filter down into households, what are the key objectives and goals of establishing a self-sustaining training and education capacity within the Knowledge Center?
For me, the most important goal, I think, is that we know that we have the knowledge to deal with crisis on island. And on island means government, but also means crisis partners, organizations on island, but also to people on Sint Maarten who have to deal with crisis. I mean, the island is in a place where you have to deal with natural crisis, of course. I mean, we just had Hurricane Tammy, and those kind of warnings and happenings are actual being here at the island. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we have that knowledge, that we have people who know how to deal with crisis, who can help others prepare for crisis, and make sure that we have one point of access to all that knowledge.
How do you envision the knowledge center supporting ongoing training and education efforts and crisis management moving forward?
Well, what for me is important to have that one spot is that we learn to talk the same language when we're talking about crisis. So if we have one spot created with dedicated trainers who can actually help those different organizations with their preparation on crisis, we all learn to speak the same language. And when we are in a crisis, it's very important that we speak that same language so that we know about each other. How can we find each other? What are we talking about? But also, what are each roles and responsibilities in dealing with that crisis?
Yeah. So what steps are being taken right now that you see, especially as a representative of VNG International, working with us, training with us, to ensure that the training and education capacities within the Knowledge Center are self-sustaining, especially in such a dynamic situation of Mother Nature, man-made disasters? It's constantly evolving. What would you say are the steps being taken right now?
Well, we have different steps. First of all, we just finished the TOT program, which means we have now 14 certified trainers on island who know how to train and educate people and organizations on crisis management. So they have fully knowledge about crisis management, but also about delivering training programs on that. And with that group, we are now expanding the Knowledge Center in trying to find information and knowledge and to create training programs so that also new people entering, for example, the government, know how to handle crisis. Those people are not only trained as trainers, but they are in many cases also very important. They play a very important role during crisis. So they are like the right hand of the ESF coordinators. They help them with, for example, information management with a solid decision-making structure. So they're not only trainers in the preparation phase, but they are also during crisis. They know what to do. They know how they are trained and they know how to find each other. And I think that is also a key point, that they know how to find each other, which means that different ESFs can communicate even more easily with each other.
Marthe, for those that just might be tuning in, I want you to break down for us the train-to-trainer specifically as just a focus question. Explain the train-to-trainer concept and how that, again, in crisis management, and again, someone who's watching this program can be able to adapt it in their own home crisis management planning. What is train the trainer? How does that concept work?
Train the trainer is that we use knowledge that, well, in this case, I have, for example, from my experience in crisis management, to transfer that to trainers of island. And personally, I'm a strong believer of training of trainers because, I don't know your island that well. And I am not the person who really knows all the ins and outs of the island. There's a different culture that I don't know in depth. So what I really think is important is that trainers from the island, people who know the island, who know the people of the island, and who know the difficulties of the island, can translate European lessons in this case to like what is working for us. And I can tell things, but actually I love it when we can develop together, because then I truly know that the knowledge that is here on the island is being used in the general crisis management lessons. Because we have general crisis management lessons a lot, but what is really doing the trick is that the people who are from in this case, the island or from a certain place can translate those lessons to what is really working with us and also what is not working.
Really see the train-to-trainer concept being, it feeds into that concept we're now really using, which is stronger together as a planet.
Exactly.
Stronger together.
That is what it is. And there is a lot of knowledge and experience here. So let's have that knowledge and experience of the island and transfer that to all the people of the island. For example, we were having a discussion yesterday about an exercise that we want to conduct. I can look at the map and I can see like, oh, here might be some difficult spot. I mean, there are a lot of schools, for example, in here, but I don't feel what the real problems are. So we had that discussion yesterday and we built a beautiful scenario with the people from the island, with the trainers group, because they know what worries them. And I don't know that.
Absolutely.
So that is for me the beauty of a training of trainers.
Absolutely. Could you explain the resources and infrastructure? Because that is always the challenge, even for St. Martin. We know this. It's not just infrastructure, it's human resources. But can you explain the resources and infrastructure required to establish and maintain a self-sustaining training and education capacity?
Yeah, of course. And you're right. It's always a challenge. So we're trying to figure out what we can do and what is suitable with the resources that we have. So for one thing, technology plays a great part. We're trying to build this online knowledge center where training, exercise, and also information are just accessible for everyone, as well as a physical place where people can go to get trained. But we have to develop that a little bit more. So first thing is like using information management, not only during crisis, as it is a part of the project, but especially also in the preparation phase and with the training and knowledge center. So make sure digitally information is accessible for people.
What are some of the challenges you would say we could encounter if not managed properly, that we can encounter in setting up the knowledge center we have to pay attention to? What would you say those points would be?
There has to be a proper structure beneath it. So there has to be responsibility in renewing information, for example, checking if plans and procedures are still the actual versions. There has to be like retraining of the trainers group. If there are new insights on crisis management, they should learn it. But also, another big challenge I see also in the Netherlands is, for example, that if we have a crisis, that we evaluate that crisis properly and that we take the lessons learned into the knowledge center so that we can build on the experiences that we encounter.
Okay. How does the training and education strategy within the knowledge center align with industry best practices and standards in crisis management?
Well, what we're trying to do is to establish some sort of basic crisis management first. So we have this basic knowledge of how is the crisis management structure in the country. What is, for example, our decision-making procedure. So that are all basic knowledge things that we build the knowledge center on. So everybody who is getting into government or other organizations with a role in crisis management should learn that basics first. Then we have like role-specific trainings. So we have like the leaders of the ESF, the coordinators, who have to be trained in like leadership. We have information management, who have to be trained in information management. So we have the role-specific trainings. And then also we have the scenario-specific trainings, which means that we're looking into specific scenarios with each other because focus in St. Martin is always very much on hurricanes, which makes completely sense because that is an actual threat. But there are a lot more crises that can be experienced. For example, we can get like explosions, we can get big fires, but also we can get like cyber attacks. We can have like school shootings, for example, and we hope not, but they can happen as well. So we're also trying to focus on those different themes, those different scenarios, and see what specialty does this scenario actually ask from us? Because a lot of crisis management principles work for each scenario, but there are also some specialty for every scenario that we should take into account. For example, who are the partners we are working with in this specific scenario? We should know that before. So we do that basic, role-specific, we do the scenario-specific, and then we do the collaboration in crisis management, because in the end, collaboration is everything. We need our partners to work in a solid way together. We need to know what are their roles, what are our roles, and how can we communicate with each other. So that is another pole of the training strategy. Sorry.
So, Martin, I'm having a conversation with VNG International expert here on the Knowledge Center as a part of the 4 pillars of the Fostering Resilient Crisis Management, Ms. Marthe Huibers. Stay tuned. My conversation with Marthe continues right after these public service announcements. Stay with us.
The Ombudsman is here for you. The Ombudsman, we're here for you. The Ombudsman, we are here for you. The Ombudsman is here for you. The Ombudsman, we're here for you. The Ombudsman, we are here for you. Good governance is a must. This institution you can trust. Guardian of the Constitution. Not one but more solutions for complaints against the government. Protectors of the citizens. Promoting good governance in our friendly island, St. Martin. The Ombudsman is here for you. The Ombudsman, we're here for you. The Ombudsman, we are here for you.
The Ombudsman is the voice and protector of the people. Visit us at E. Camille Richardson Street, number 13 on the Police Station Road in Phillipsburg.
Hi, everyone. If you're just joining us, you're watching the 10-part series on fostering resilient crisis management. My guest in this edition of the program is Marthe Huibers. She is a VNG International expert dealing specifically on train-the-trainer and the knowledge center, one of the 4 pillars of fostering resilient crisis management. Marthe, we left off talking about establishing good practices as it relates to the standards in crisis management. The next question I want to ask you is what methodologies and approaches are being employed to develop and deliver training programs within the Knowledge Center?
Yeah. Well, we use standards and methodologies that are used for crisis management all over the world. I think there is a great standardization in training and exercising when it comes to basic crisis management. So we use those methodologies. We take the lessons learned from that. But for me, the most important thing when it comes to training and development and also delivering trainings is that we ask our participants what they need most in crisis management. Because, of course, we have the standards and we can build on that. But for me, it is important that we work with the things people are actually needing. So, for example, we heard the question, we need to know more about cyber crisis because really we don't know what to do if we have a cyber crisis, basically. Yeah. So it is questioning what are the goals that are desired. And then we start building on that with the knowledge that we find.
Okay. How do you ensure that the training and education programs that are carried out in the Knowledge Center are tailored to meet the needs or specific needs of different stakeholders in crisis management? Because we can't do this as a government by ourselves, so we have to look at our partners as well, but we have to train together. So the question is, and you did mention that, which is a specific type of crisis might be in a specific sector, but how do we come together now and actually ensure that the programs can be tailored in order to cover all of the different scenarios?
Yeah, it's a good and very important point. And again, here comes talking to each other helps, because so we invite crisis management partners to let us know what they find difficult in like collaboration during crisis. Also in the trainers group, we have trainers from different ESFs from the government, but also trainers from outside the government. So we have someone from the Red Cross, we have someone from the airport, from the Port of St. Martin, but also from the St. Martin Development Fund. So we have partners in our trainers group, but also we know where to find our partners, and we're starting talking with them and to them about what do you encounter during crisis and how do you think, or what do you think is needed to like enhance communication, for example, during the crisis.
Yeah.
So the partners have to be in the program. That is a really important component. Yes.
Absolutely. Now, one of the key things I've always mentioned in my 15 years of service on behalf of the people of this country, and in the 10, 12 years of that 15 of training in crisis management and disaster management, how does one go about properly measuring the effectiveness and impact of the training and education programs offered by the Knowledge Center? And of course, gaining some knowledge and information from those experiences and applying it back into the Knowledge Center so that it can expand?
It is. That's a very valid point you're making, because yes, that is a good question. Well, we've just started the program, but one of the pillars of the program is that we also have this evaluation point. So we try to evaluate on trainings and exercises that we do, asking the people, what did you learn from this? What did work? What did not work? Try to take that information into next trainings. But also we have to look at what is actually happening during crisis. And for example, we just had Tammy, which thank God wasn't that big of a hurricane, but still it asks for preparation. And so now we're taking the lessons out of, okay, we did trainings, we did exercise, especially also on preparing for hurricanes. What did you use? And what did you not use? And why did you not use it? Was it because it wasn't helpful, or was it just because you forgot it? So we're trying to see what is actually being used from the things that we train in the trainings and in the exercises, and make sure that those elements that are actually used get more we put more emphasis on that in the trainings and exercises. Yeah.
Can you provide examples of, in your experience, especially with Train the Trainer, successful training and education initiatives that have been implemented by the Knowledge Center or carrying that out in the Knowledge Center based on other operations that you might have been a part of in your experience? Can you give us a story there of how it's been effective in other parts of the world that you might have visited?
Yeah, sure. Well, for example, I'm now doing this training of training component in Georgia, Europe, where I'm training professional firefighters how to train their volunteers in the areas that are only working with volunteers on, for example, providing psychological help after a crisis of disaster. So that is also that part of training of trainer that I think is very important, that together with the professionals over there, I'm creating these training programs for their volunteers, because I know what works in psychological help after a crisis, but they know how to transfer it to their people and what is important for the situations where they work. So that is an example, again, of building programs together and then deliver it to the people who actually need those programs. In this case, the volunteers who are helping the fire services during big disasters.
You mentioned earlier how technology can play a role. I want you to expand on that just a little bit. What role does technology play in the training and education strategy of the Knowledge Center? Can you expand on that for us?
Yeah, well, I'm a strong believer in what we call blended learning, which means that we have an online component in which people can learn and take knowledge to them, but also a physical component in where they learn how to apply the knowledge that we give them, for example, via an online e-learning or something. So technology is important by, only on one hand by creating a space where information is accessible, but on the second hand also for giving people the opportunity to, in their own times, learn about the theory that we provide on crisis management, for example. And then I also think that technology is not that one thing that is important, but we also try to combine it with physical trainings, because in physical trainings you have like the opportunity to really test knowledge and also to ask questions that are not always available in like online learnings. But it is an important part because people are busy. We can't always get together and online trainings are just always accessible if you have them. So it is important that we have that component as well.
That's a very good point. How do you ensure that the training and education programs are accessible to individuals from diverse backgrounds and geographic locations, especially when we get into the topic at some point where we'll be talking to Professional Raymond Madden on regional collaboration?
Yes.
That's a question that definitely he'll be asked as well, but I want to get your take on it because the Knowledge Center, I'm thinking, should be dynamic to allow input to come in if a person is not able to be on the ground with you, but they can assist from overseas using the technology and feeding in. Tell us, how do you see this aspect of making the training education programs accessible in such a way that outside can feed in?
Yes, well, we hope to do that with the system that we work with. For example, we're now creating this information management system that we can use during crisis, because also during crisis, you sometimes need expert views. You need to have them in your conference room. Well, the same is what we try to do in the Knowledge Center. So there are two things. One thing is building a network. So knowing who the persons are who have this specific knowledge on specific themes. So we know who to call for help. And on the other hand, of course, we want to fly in sometimes experts and not physically fly them in, but just have them on the screen during trainings or have them in, for example, a video taped so that people can just listen to the lessons that they have to learn. And in a live training, people can ask questions live. And of course, there are a lot of beautiful examples of how we can do that. At this point during crisis, we're trying to exercise with, for example, a Teams environment in which we can have online discussions. But yes, we want to make knowledge accessible and you don't want to fly in people all the time and it's not even possible always. So let's use the technology there is. And we have a very good information management specialist in our team who is definitely helping with this part of the project.
How do you address the sustainability of the Knowledge Center's training and education efforts in the long term, just to make sure that especially if I had to adapt that to St. Martin. One of the key things that I've seen is that we have an opportunity here to understand that a generation comes and a generation goes.
Yes.
So when we're talking long term, we have to be able to hand off this knowledge once compiled off to a next generation. So that's where that long term sustainability of crisis management comes in. How can that knowledge center be transferred generational? Not
Well,
just, generational.
No, it's a good question. And I recognize it actually from what we're dealing with in the Netherlands, because also there we see that a lot of knowledge and experience is leaving like organizations and new knowledge and experience is coming in, but we need to transfer somehow that the knowledge that is going out is not really going out. So, what we, for example, try to do is that the trainers group that we have been educating right now is going to start to educate a new trainers group. So knowledge from that one trainers group is going to be transferred to a new trainers group, because I think one thing that is very important, that we have like a solid filling of trainers who keep joining the program and joining the group, so that we keep that knowledge in the group. For example, we already now see that one of the trainers has got a new function. Yeah, well, that she still is very enthusiastic about the group, but her knowledge is like going out now, which is logical. It happens. So we have to prepare for that. For example, by keeping aware of educating new trainers in the group. And also by delivering a solid training program. For example, what we're working on now is what we call a auto calendar. It's opleiden, trainen, oefenen. So, education, training and exercising, for the next coming years, in which we, for example, 2 times or 3 times a year offer this basic crisis management courses. So that we make sure that everybody who is enrolling in a crisis management position can follow that basic course and can be brought to the same level of knowledge and that other people are already. So yes, it is a challenge. And we're trying to think of smart ways to keep that knowledge inside.
Absolutely.
And I think what is important is that we have a clear structure beneath that knowledge center. So we need responsibility. Well, I've mentioned that before. I think we need someone who keeps seeing the process as a whole, not only as a project for now, but as a project that is there for the long term to stay, well, to be a solid pillar of preparation of crisis management.
Martha, we are running out of time, and the conversation was just getting interesting as we continue to delve into this topic of the Knowledge Center. Giving you time now to provide the people of St. Martin viewing this program final words from yourself as an expert from VNG International in regard to crisis management and the Knowledge Center.
Thank you. Well, thank you for listening, first of all. And maybe only the key message that I'd like to give is you live on an island where we have several threats and dangers, but where you also have a group of people who know how to deal with those threats and who do their utmost best to make sure that the effects of crisis and disasters are managed. So please be safe yourself. Always listen to the communication and information that is provided when, for example, a hurricane is arriving. Prepare yourselves, but also have trust and faith in that there are people who want to help and want to manage those effects of the crisis.
VNG International Knowledge Center and Train-the-Trainer expert, Ms. Marthe Huibers. Martha, it's great to have you in the program. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk to me on this subject. So I really wish that we can continue our conversation in the future. Of course, stay in touch so that we can bring more information and knowledge on how crisis management, of course, continues to evolve. So thank you for being with me.
Thank you.
And to our radio listeners, television viewers, online viewers, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this special edition of Inside Government, the Fostering Resilient Crisis Management series. If you've missed it, be sure to catch video on demand at the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin at facebook.com/SXMGOV. And of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel of the Government of St. Martin at youtube.com/Government of St. Martin. And for audio playback, be sure to tune in to St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM throughout the course of the day. On behalf of my colleagues at VNG International and all of us here at the Government of St. Martin, I'm Cedric Peterson. Thanks so much for tuning in.